We're going to be talking about the impossible game, how to win at life management and personal development today. It is December and 2023 is around the corner. And we do not want this to be another year that January 1st rolls out and you're like, well, I guess I should write some sort of goal down. We want you thinking about your life right now. And it's a great time to be doing that. So I'm going to introduce all of us really quickly. Don't stop believing. Clint, yes. Clint's on fire. This is good. My name is Hampton Dortch. Rachel always makes these slideshows. She went with the formal pictures today. I think we look good in these, but I like the more kind of laid back, fun ones. But I can respect the formality. I'm Hampton. This is Rachel. She's our director of marketing, and then Josh Swing, my fellow account executive here at WildSpark. So we are really excited to hop in today and just talk about some of these topics with you. And the thing is here, none of us, we're not acting like we're experts and that we just absolutely crush this. We actually have just been gifted this framework that we're going to be talking through that is really helpful for all of us. And so we wanted to share it with you. So let's talk about what is personal development. That's the first thing I want to discuss. We pulled up a dictionary definition for you to define that. It's from Cambridge Dictionary. So activities that develop a person's capabilities and relationships, facilitate employability, and enhance quality of life. So it's a very broad term here. So what we've decided to do is break up personal development into 4 domains of one's life. And to help you remember these, they're all going to start with a B. So personal development for today is going to be growth in body, being, balance, and business. And we are going to show you some data. We're going to give you some practical tips for each of these. And we're going to leave you with a framework and a tool to help you go through this in a very strategic and intentional way. The first thing that I'll say is one of the most common things that we see in our world is people who are crushing it in 2 of these areas, or 1 or 3. And nobody is perfect. We're not trying to claim that. And there are different seasons to prioritize different levels of these depending on where you are in your life. However, you do not have to just totally sacrifice and give up one of them for the sake of another one. And we're going to just be talking about what does it look like to be thinking strategically across all of these, because at the end of the day, I firmly believe that neglecting one of these can really hurt you in a different area. It's like we see people that are absolutely crushing it in business, but they don't think twice about their body, like their health. Or maybe they don't have a great family life because they're only focusing about work. Or you could play this game with all of them. But I just think that if you leave it to chance, this is not going to happen on accident. And so we want to help you really think intentionally and strategically about each of these. So Rachel is going to show us some data that we found.
Yeah, and I don't know about any of you. If so, you can throw something into the comments. But like in college, I think I heard several times people say, these 3 areas of life of work, money, and relationships, pick 2 because you can't crush all 3. And chances are if you're doing great at 1 or 2 of these, the other one is suffering. And we believe that's a lie. Like, you can be successful and intentional in all of these areas of life, despite some of the cultural and social things out there that tell you otherwise. So, and I think that came from The Devil Wears Prada too. If there are any fans of that movie, shout out to the millennials out there who like that one, like me. So, but surprisingly, it's really hard to find macro data and statistics on personal development, leadership development, all of the things that we're big advocates for here at WildSpark. But one thing that it's very easy to find solid data on is New Year's resolutions. And especially at this time of year, when people think about personal development, a lot of times they're thinking about, well, what do I want to do or who do I want to be in 2023? Now, the funny thing about this chart here, now this particular study, they followed about 5,000 people throughout the year and have checked with them regularly. And they took their resolutions and they categorized them into one of these categories you'll see here, whether it's living healthier, career or job goals, financial goals, relationships. You can see all of them listed there. But it's funny, we talk about doing well in these 4 areas, and yet these people are being measured on just one. And so I think that this data demonstrates that there is still that idea that you can't succeed in all 4 domains of life that we've laid out, those 4 Bs. And they followed up with the people in this survey here in this calendar year. And as of probably about a week ago, only 9% of the people who have gone through this study this year are still consistent and have made progress on the resolution that they set in January of this year. So, that's just a little bit of really like timely and relevant data that's from this year. And it's from, talking about New Year's resolutions, which a lot of people are going to get ready to set forth and do here in the next few weeks. And even if you're not a New Year's resolution person, I'd say over time, my generation, the millennial generation, I think they've basically said, I'm not interested in doing that. And I think like over time in this particular study too, they found that less and less people are doing resolutions in the new year. But even if you're not doing that, if you're in any sort of leadership position in an organization, you're probably thinking about, well, what are we going to do as a team or as an organization in 2023? So overall, the framework we're going to lay out today is to help you not be in that 9% of people who can't stick with some sort of progress or goal they're trying to reach in 2023. And that really kind of lays the foundation for this problem that we're gonna set the stage for and try to solve today. And it's really that you'll never drift to your desired destination. That's a saying we say a lot around WildSpark. And I use this illustration of this leaf, this fall leaf that fell into a river and is now drifting down the river to wherever it's going to end up, completely at the whim of the chaos of the river. And, when I was also doing some research for our talk together today, I found that a scientist went out and tried to see if you could determine where a fallen leaf would end up on the river. And they weren't able to do it because there were just too many random confounding variables. They couldn't even study it. So the problem is that people go through life drifting and really not having plans, intention about what they want to achieve or where they want to go. Or a lot of times when people do, they don't have the right tools or the right mindset. They get discouraged and they just give up and feel like being a master of these 4 domains is impossible. So that's why we called this webinar The Impossible Game. And the framework we're going to give you, we're going to email you at the end of this webinar, is called The Impossible Game, because we believe it's not an impossible game. And we want to equip you and encourage you and give you the mental tools and just the daily, weekly, monthly tools to make 2023 a really successful year for you.
Man, I am fired up, to say the least. And to double down, even Rachel, on what you're sharing, this question holds so much power. I love asking this question for really anything, but specifically with this. And the question is, what's at stake? What's at stake? So what's at stake if I intentionally plan my life and maximize all these key areas, but then also like, what's at stake if I don't? What's at stake if I'm that leaf drifting down the river and I just go through life at the end of my life? There's probably going to be a lot of regret around some of the key areas that are neglected because there's a lack of intentional plan in place. And if there is a plan in place, what happens is joy, fulfillment, purpose, in all of these different areas combined. And I think what you said, Hampton, is totally true. Most people go through their entire lives and there's never a season in which they're doing well at all of these areas. And I think it is a complete misconception that you cannot. And that's why we titled it The Impossible Game, is because most people think that it's impossible. In reality, it's not. If you're willing to put some time and energy and effort into this, it's going to pay off 100 times for you in the long run. And we unpacked the 4 Bs, Hampton: body, being, balance, and business. But I think this would be a win even if you just got those 4 Bs of ways to process your life. But we're actually going to take it 2 steps further today. So we're going to give you a framework around processing those 4 Bs. And then we're going to give you specific areas within the Bs to be able to do that in. But for these 4 Bs, the framework that you see right now on the screen is a glimpse at what you're going to get leaving the webinar today. And really what we're going to be looking at here is evaluating each of these areas that Hampton laid out, with first looking at the facts. So we're going to start with what's real about this situation. Be brutally honest with yourself. And then let's talk about the feelings that we have. Be raw. Tap into those emotions and the way that you feel about the current facts in your life. But then we're going to shift. So what you don't see here on this sheet, is the second part of it, which we'll show you here in a second. We're going to shift over to the fruit side of things. So what are the results that we want to see, and what focus do we need to have? What's going to be really relevant for us to see that fruit that we want to see in our lives? What are the habits, the formations that need to be in place, not just these high level goals or these goals that lack true depth and meaning. And so we're gonna dig into some things here. But Hampton, I want you to kick us off here. Let's go ahead and dig into the 4 B's.
So we're talking about the 4 B's of body, being, balance, and business. That is the 4 domains that we're breaking up our life into. And I know that as body has come up, some of us already are like, golly, I know, I got to lose 20 pounds in the new year. Thanks, Hampton. Because the reason I know that is because the data says that so many people are putting that one out there. I think this one is very common. The reason we like to start with body is because although some people might disagree with me, science, I don't have an article to show you this, but I would say that science would say that your body is the easiest to like quickly see results in, because a lot of it you're in control of, not all of it. I know there's special circumstances, but you really do have a choice in how you're treating your body, how you're fueling it, what kind of activity level that you have. And so the first thing that I want to do is speak to the person that just feels a little behind in this area. I just think that I plead with you to stick with something for 3 months. 3 months. Don't look in the mirror. Don't get on the scale. Don't worry about, like, find some sort of like program fitness wise, whether it's walking outside or going to the gym or whatever you want. And then obviously the fuel part of it, which I will speak to. I just think that this is a life principle that goes far beyond body. But oftentimes I think as people, we quit too early because at the end of the day, we are looking for an easy button and it does not exist. But I do think that for your body, you actually can simplify things. And I won't go into like extreme detail and all of this, but fitness, I do think that's important. But you don't, if you're starting at 0, then don't think that, we're saying, oh, you got to go to the gym like, 6 days a week and do this extremely intense workout plan. Just think about your activity level. How active are you being? Are you being a good steward of your body? Are you moving? Are you sitting in a chair all day long? And then this one, I really want to speak to the fuel part because I think that there's a lack of education about this in America. It's really important to be mindful of like what you're putting into your bodies. I know the holidays are coming up, so give yourself some grace here. But I would say, and I don't have data around this, but from a personal experience, I'd probably say 70% of like the results in as far as the way that you look and how you feel have to do with what you're eating, what you're putting in your body, the fuel, how much water you're drinking. And I think so often people just absolutely crush it in the gym and then put it all to waste based on what they're eating and everything. And I'm not promoting that you just have to be, crazy about like a specific regimen or something, but just really be mindful of what you are fueling your body with. And I will say the last thing I'll end with here is all of what I just said is meaningless if we don't look at the purpose or the why behind this. Because at the end of the day, your body is your vessel. That is how you go throughout life. And it really affects so many other areas as we talk about being and tying in mental health to that. I think that your body is definitely going to affect that, how you're treating it. As we talk about balance, family, relationships, how much energy you have to play with your children if you have them, or how much energy you have for your friends, and then business, how you're feeling at work, how much energy you have to give. I think that body just really plays into this. And so I just think, and I've seen time and time again, if you neglect this part of your life, then it's really going to have ripple effects in these other areas. So my challenge to you going into the new year is find some sort of plan as far as fitness level and how you're fueling your body, and stick with it for at least 90 days because people quit too early. And I think once you break through that wall of 90 days or however long that you think it needs to be, all of a sudden you'll find yourself enjoying what you're doing. I think the last thing I'll say is, how many times have you rolled your eyes at the person that just constantly running or constantly going to the gym? It's like, okay, we get it. You love working out. I think you might be surprised if you really invest that certain amount of time that you're going to realize it's only helping you in so many areas of your life. So just give it 90 days, stick to something. And I don't think that you're going to regret it. It's going to impact the rest of your life. So let's shift over to being now.
Yeah, so I'm going to share a little bit about being and what this means. Because of all of the ones that we're talking about today in those 4 Bs, those 4 domains, I think that this one is probably the most foundational, but also the easiest one to misinterpret, right? What does that mean, being? Well, in this context, what it means first and foremost is your connection to a belief system, a higher power, a religion, a philosophy, whatever it is for you. Um, your worldview is really going to drive so much about how you view the other B's in your life. So when you guys get the worksheet after this, and it's a solid worksheet, it's like a good 12 pages, but it's meant to be long, not to be overwhelming, but to really help you dig in and figure some of this stuff out. But one reason why we prioritize connection is just because it determines so many other facets of your life. And so you might sit down and start answering some of the questions in the worksheet and think that you've got your connection figured out. But in reality, you might still have some lingering questions and personal searching and curiosity to do. So when you look at, some of the more in-depth questions that you're going to see on the worksheet, one of them is going to be broken down into meaning. Like, what are the facts in my life about what I believe about a higher power, a religion, spirituality, or worldview, or what I believe about a philosophy guiding my life, or just timeless principles that I believe in. We're also going to talk about just your level of certainty in that area, because I think that that also determines what you believe about work and family and body and really the desired destination you want to take your life. So there are going to be questions about that, and then goals you can set if there isn't a strong level of certainty, or if connection to a higher power or spirituality or worldview is not something that is very strong for you. If it's a goal that you want to explore that more in the new year, that's going to be there on this worksheet with some ways to set goals, practical, small ones to really help you have that deeper connection to life. And then there's going to be questions about purpose. Like I said, and I don't know if any of you have ever heard of the story of the dash, but basically on your headstone, that dash represents everything that happens between your birth and your death, right? So we're going to ask you, like, what are the facts about my understanding of my personality and my temperament? What are the facts about my gifts and my talents and how I'm stewarding them and using them in the world? And do I need to dig a little bit deeper into how I'm wired and do some assessments, or just ask some people who are close to me? And how do I understand my identity through the lens of my religion or my worldview or my spirituality and belief system? And so being is really so foundational. We put body first because there are so many practical things you can do to immediately start feeling better and be energized, how you feel your body and how you move. But there are going to be some really good critical thinking and thought-provoking questions around meaning, meditation, makeup, movement, and then even meeting. Like, what is your commitment to a local group of people who, or friends or family who believe the same things that you believe, or maybe if they don't believe the same things about you, that really sharpen you. What does maybe spiritual fellowship or accountability look like? Am I being vulnerable? Am I being authentic with others when it comes to my worldview? So, like, for me personally, when I answer those meeting questions in the worksheet, myself, I'm a Christian, and so for me, it would be commitment to a local church, and like, how am I building into relationships there? How am I growing in my faith and letting people hold me accountable? How am I being vulnerable and authentic with my life and in the areas where I really want to grow in my relationship with God? So it's my favorite part of the worksheet. I think that it really helps you set the tone for your planning in the new year. And so there are just some really great things in there that we want you to dig into to really determine what is going to be that driving force and that foundation for how you set up these different domains in your life.
That's good, Rachel. I'll take it over to balance for us. And as we're evaluating these 4 Bs, if you could imagine, I had some juggling balls here in my hands, and I started like juggling for everybody. I won't do that because I can't juggle, so it wouldn't be very pretty. But imagine that these bees are those balls that you're juggling in the air. And like a lot of times it can feel like a juggling act, trying to keep them all up without dropping any of them. But as you think about those balls that are in the air, I believe all the other bees are rubber balls. This ball is a glass ball. And meaning like if you drop this ball, it could break. Where the other balls, when you look at body and being in business, it's typically easy to bounce back from a loss in those areas. This is the one area that involves other people, and relationships are extremely fragile. That's just the nature of it and how we connect with other people. And so that's why I said that this is a glass ball. It's because if we drop this ball, if we hurt people, not that you can't have redemption and reconciliation in those relationships. I think that is absolutely doable. But it is more difficult and more challenging than making a business mistake, correcting course and jumping back on it, or, failing on your fitness goals. You can always turn around and jump back on it. This is a little bit more challenging. And Hampton, I even love what you shared earlier about the seasonality of some of these, because we're going to walk through a couple of key areas of balance here, but I know that this may look different for people based on the season that they're in. And so as you see something on the list like significant other, I know that there may be people who don't have a significant other currently. Maybe there's a desire to have a significant other. Maybe you're dating or trying to date, or maybe you just experienced loss. So I want to be empathetic towards where people are at with this. Clint with the master juggling skills in 2023. That's the goal here, man. But I know that for me personally, the significant other is how I prioritize my wife and Aaron. And how do I make sure that we have regular dates for us two to connect in light of this crazy season that we're in with young kids that are constant distractions from our conversations. Whatever that looks like for you, maybe you're focusing on yourself. Maybe this significant other isn't existent. And so you're going to put more time into body and being in business, or maybe you're focusing more on family and community here. We're going to talk about that here in a second. But yeah, we shift down here to family. And this would be my children, for me personally, and my parents. How am I intentional about still talking to my mom? If you don't hear anything else today, call your mom, people. After you get off this call, she'll appreciate it. But am I consistent with that? Am I staying in touch with my siblings and making sure that I'm investing in those relationships for those that are close to me? And then down into community. And this was in a very specific order. Am I driving connections outside of work with close friendships? Because we know that that's where we thrive as humans. It's not in isolation and loneliness by ourselves, but it's when we have other people that we can rely on and we can count on. And so I would encourage you to pay special attention to this one. Those that will tell you that like have been super successful in life would tell you like they would give it all back if it meant healthy relationships with an estranged daughter or son or spouse or somebody that they no longer have communication with because of mistakes that they've made. So balance is going to be critically important as we dig into how we'll think about this moving forward. But then we'll segue here into business, the last B, before we get in deep to the framework here. And why this is last on the list is a little bit strategic. I believe, and we believe, that if you're hitting a home run in body, if you feel healthy and energized when you're showing up to work, if you are spiritually sound, if you're doing the appropriate amount of meditation and you're focused when you come into work, if you have balance in your relationships at home, if you're being filled up at home and you don't feel like you're missing the mark there, you are going to hit a home run in business. We use a saying here, and it's boardroom to family room. And then we want to go back to boardroom with it, because we know that if at work we help people hit a home run in their personal lives, then they're going to show up back at work ready to double down and make an even bigger impact through the work that they're doing. And so how I would recommend thinking about this business side of things, we're going to think about 3 different areas. Career trajectory. This would be in like thinking out 2 years from now. We all 3 just got done doing our end of year performance reviews. And one of the questions on that sheet was, where do you want to be in 2 years at WildSpark? And I think that's a really important question to ask yourself with the role that you're currently in. Where do you want to be in 2 years? And then that allows you to unlock what learning and skills do I need to grow in to be able to get to that place where I want to get to? And then what relationships do I need to lean into? How do I need to network outside of my internal team to grow in some of these key areas? Or how do I need to leverage my internal team and learn from others to grow in these key areas? So 3 critical things here as you're looking at how do you be the best professional that you can possibly be with whatever that looks like for you. And so throw a comment in the comment section on which of the 4 B's resonated the most as Hampton breaks down how we're going to evaluate these even further. So body, being, balance, business, which one of these really hit home for you? Go, Hampton.
Good stuff, Swing. Totally agree. These 4 B's fuel each other. And again, we are never going to tell you here that we think that anyone can be perfect or that we have it all together. Again, there are seasons where you're going to have to lean more into one of these than the other, but don't just completely neglect one of them. And I think, with this being broadcasted live on LinkedIn, we're all professionals here. And so you might even currently be in a business mindset, but we want you to be thinking about body, being, and balance, knowing that it can and will affect your performance at work. Brad, love balance. Hold on to that glass ball. Balance. Come on. Hey, well, good stuff. It's about to be Christmas. So you're going to hopefully get a lot of time with some of those relationships that mean a lot to you. Okay, so this is the part of the tool that we're going to be giving to you. And over the next 3 slides, I'm just going to go over what it will look like for body, but you can expect something to be similar for each of the different domains. So what you'll see is the first question we're going to ask are, what are the facts about my fruit for my body? So you're going to look through some of this. So the frame, the function, the foundation, fitness, fuel, fire, and fun. Rachel, if you want to go to the next slide, I think it'll help unpack that a little bit more. So this is for you. You don't have to show this to somebody else. My recommendation would be that you go along with what it says and literally write down the facts. And sometimes it hurts, but when you put it on paper and look at it, it really can help you decide, what you want to do about it. So really be honest. The first thing that comes to your mind, write down the facts about each of these on the left side of the screen as you're seeing. Now, if you go up to the top, I know that this can either be a big win or it can sting a little bit, but that's kind of the goal of this. What are my feelings about the facts? Maybe I'm fired up. Maybe I'm encouraged. Maybe I'm embarrassed. Maybe I'm ashamed. I don't know. I've felt a mixture of all of these feelings throughout my life, but I think it's important to start there first, and then you can transition to the next one, which I'll let Rachel do. Well, no. Yeah.
I got you. Sorry, brother. There are so many good comments over here in the thread that I'm just juggling a lot. All these rubber balls. Yeah. So before I came to WildSpark about 8 months ago, but prior to that, for about a year, I had really dug into some personal development resources that talked about the stories that we tell ourselves and how when we set a goal and often if we don't achieve it or achieve the progress that we want, we're not very good about thinking about the mental aspect behind that. We might just say, oh, I'm weak or I'm lazy or I'm not strong-willed, and tell ourselves these truly awful stories that then fuel our thoughts and our actions. And the biggest takeaway from a lot of those resources I dug into was that, your thoughts create your feelings and your feelings kind of create your life, right? Because from there, from that progression, that's really where you're taking action and functioning. And so it's so radically important to identify the stories that we tell ourselves, whether they're positive or negative, and then hold them up to the light and say, is this true? Is this the story I really want to tell myself? Is this the best way to look at something? So of all the boxes that you walk through in the Impossible Game framework, my favorite is, what is the current story I tell myself? Here's my positive story and here's my negative story. And for some of you who are on the call, who maybe manage teams at your organization, we've actually used this at WildSpark with our core leadership team to talk about how we're doing with our business goals and how our team is doing and how we want to plan for the new year. And shout out to my boss, Corey Tao, world's greatest boss. He constantly will challenge me about, well, what is the story you're telling yourself? And it sounds like you're telling yourself a really bad story a lot of times if I'm working through something that I'm struggling, right? And so I think that this box is kind of the MVP because it gets you to think about the negative stories and the positive stories. And a lot of times for people, they only have a negative story and they're not even thinking about a positive story. And so this challenges you to create a positive story, to take your circumstances and your facts and to look at them in a positive light. And usually that is the story that's going to fuel you to that small, consistent action that results into massive action and helps you really be successful in an area of your life. And remember, we're always going to champion consistency. It's better to do something small consistently every single day of the year than to just do some big massive program the first 2 weeks, burn out, and then get discouraged and never do it again. So that's why those stories are so crucial. And then really when you start getting into that mindset, that leads you into the last box where you're asking yourself, what is at stake? And so much about your being and your belief system and a lot of your balance with your relationships is gonna be involved here in what's at stake. Like what's at stake is in a lot of ways your life, your future, your joy, your fulfillment, So these two boxes really take the facts of your life or your circumstances and how you're feeling about them, but then channel them into a really productive framework to help you move forward and take action in a way that's going to set you up for success.
It's great. Good stuff, Rachel. And the final thing that we want to show you, this would be the next page after you go through what are my feelings, and then what's the story that I'm telling myself, and then what's at stake. You're going to go here. I think oftentimes with goal setting, it's just like, oh, this is my goal. And that's fine. But I think if you really go through that journey of understanding just the facts about your life, the way you feel about those, and the story you tell yourself, that goal that you end up with might actually be different than if you just randomly wrote a goal down on a piece of paper. So that's why we save this spot here for the end. And you're going to write down 4 different targets. And these could be very different. It could be, I want to run a half marathon this year. I want to only eat fast food 1 time a week. I don't know. Like, you're based on what you went through before. You're going to write down these 4 goals. Then you're going to write down the 4 targets on the top box right there. And then Rachel's going to finish out for us what the rest of this looks like.
Yeah. And again, like here, you'll notice in this box about story, we're not asking you to write a negative story here anymore. We're going to focus on, well, what is the new story you're telling yourself? Or what does your future self say? What is the story that your future self tells yourself when you have reached that goal or you've become more consistent or whatever it is? Another thing I want to encourage you in when it comes to the positive story is nurturing. The positive story is compassionate for yourself. Nobody ever gets beat into submission to make transformative change in their life. Nobody's ever shamed into transformative change, right? Or guilted into it. True, lasting, fulfilling change or progress, like we're talking about here and that we've set out for in 2023, it happens with compassion and grace. So when you set these targets, set realistic ones. If it's just, hey, I want to drink 64 ounces of water a day. Hey, I only drink 8 ounces of water a day. I just want to double it. I just want to drink 16 ounces of water a day. Start at small, attainable goals and then tweak these as you go and as you find yourself making progress. But it all really should be centered around that positive story that you're going to tell yourself in 12 months. And the positive story that you come up with on that previous worksheet to see things in a good, compassionate, self-caring light. Because that's really going to help you make progress. And then we talk about this with what is called a domino target. A domino target is exactly like it sounds, right? You hit a domino and then all the other dominoes fall down. Like, what is a target that you can set that's really going to fuel some of these other targets that you've set? So maybe you're in a position where you're not ready to set 4 targets on body. Maybe you're at a place where you're like, hey, look, this is my plate. And I understand I'm a full-time working mom. I've got 2 small children. I have a home and a husband. I don't have family nearby. I'm from, South Florida, Miami area, and I live in Birmingham, Alabama. So, you always have to have a contingency plan and have a backup plan. And so I've got a big plate, right? And so I totally get that. Hey, maybe 1 goal or 2 goals is all that's sustainable and practical for me right now. But I would encourage you to make sure that one of those goals is a domino goal or a domino target, something that you're moving towards that really sets everything else in motion. And it's like, man, once I get that under control, I really feel like the others are really going to start to fall into place. So I would say on this body worksheet, probably just being consistent in movement. That's probably once you find movement that you love and you stick to it, whether it's 3 days a week, 5 days a week, every day of the week, whatever it is, that's an example of a domino target. That is really, once you get consistent with that, if you want to think about it in terms of habits, James Clear, I'm sure everybody here has heard Atomic Habits hyped up because it deserves it. But select a domino target that's really going to help put some of these other targets in place and make them easier to achieve.
I would reemphasize that, Rachel. And if my internet connection goes out, one of you take over. It was hiccuping a little bit a second ago, but I would focus more on the formation, right? Who are we becoming more than what are we accomplishing? And so it's great to have a target of like, I want to run a half marathon, but I think it's more important to think about the formation of like, oh, I want to become a runner, and a half marathon is something that I can do to help myself become a runner, because the half marathon ends at some point, but becoming or being a runner doesn't end. And so it's another thing that Atomic Habits is big on, if I was going to add in a little bit there. And then I'll transition with some pro tips, if that's cool, Rachel. Is that what's up next here? Yeah. And so a couple of pro tips here. I'm going to pull a little bit more from Atomic Habits that Rachel just mentioned. It's a fantastic book if you haven't read it yet. Extremely helpful as you're thinking about personal growth. But I think what's really important is to not make goals and set these targets and just forget about them and never look at them again, because chances are they're not going to happen if you don't look at them regularly. So I would visualize them. I would put it down somewhere that you know you're going to be able to find it very easily, and write it on a mirror or put it on your screensaver on your laptop or wherever it is that you know that you're going to be able to see it visually, and it's going to be a source of accountability for you. So what's important is to evaluate daily, weekly, monthly. Atomic Habits has this principle, and it's called the never miss twice principle. And so what it means is, if you are trying to become a runner, whatever it is, whatever target you're setting for yourself, you can put boxes on a calendar and physically check them off. And what I mean by never miss twice is, we know that crazy things are going to happen. We know that you're going to get bombarded with a last minute project at work, or your kids are going to get sick one day, and it's just going to throw off everything. And you may miss that day, but never miss 2 days in a row, because one day is just a sporadic occurrence. 2 days, it starts to form habits. And so what you don't want to do is you completely fall off. And the longer that you wait to get back on, the more difficult it becomes. So if you'll hop right back on as soon as you fall off, you're going to continue and press on towards that formation or towards that goal that you're setting for yourself. And so never miss twice. Never miss twice. And then the other thing that I would recommend is, we know that growth happens best in the context of community. When just left to ourselves, we are much more willing to let ourselves down than we are to let other people down in any of these key areas. And so I have some data, actually, some statistics here that are really shocking when it comes to how impactful community, other people around us to help support us in our goals are. The first one is that if you will just boldly declare your goal to somebody else, if you'll just say it out loud, then you are 65% more likely to achieve that goal than you were if you just kept it to yourself. So if nothing else, tell somebody. It could be anybody that you're going after this goal, and you're going to be much more likely to achieve it. If you'll take that a step further, if you will put time on the calendar or invite in somebody to ask you about that goal, if there is a time in the future where you know somebody's going to ask you about that goal that you're working towards, you are 95% more likely to achieve it, which is just shocking to me, especially like the statistic that you mentioned at the beginning, Rachel. I think it was like 9% of people have followed through on their New Year's resolutions that they set in 2022. And to think of like 95% chance that I will achieve it if I allow somebody to hold me accountable to that goal is like crazy different, right? It's a game changer. And Hampton, you're like an expert on this with some of the B team stuff that you've helped with, and could probably speak even more. But I would invite you all to, if it's just one person, to make clear your goals to that individual and make sure that they're allowed. You give them permission to hold you accountable to it.
Yeah. If you boldly declare something to somebody else, it makes you say it, and so, and that person knows about it, and if you ask them to ask you about it, I mean, we're all going to do it. I mean, if you say, "Hey, I'll meet you at the gym at 6 a.m. tomorrow," you're much more likely to show up and see that other person than if you were just going alone, because there's no accountability there. And so what I wanted to briefly talk about is WildSpark is what we are offering. And so there's an element that we've been talking about as far as at WildSpark. We actually talk about body, being, balance, and business. We call them B teams. People laugh at that because they're like, I want to be on the A team. But we have conversations when we're in groups with people and we talk about these things. But additionally, like what our WildSpark our offering is this can help bring personal development to your team. It's leadership development, which certainly if you're a manager or a supervisor, this is obviously a lot of what we're providing through our content is going to help you lead other people. But really what we've been talking about today is what does it look like to lead yourself? And so many of our clients are using WildSpark with not just managers, but everybody in their company so that they can be thinking about some of these things and then coming together and having conversations. So what we've talked about today is, yes, you can watch a really inspirational TED Talk or listen to a great podcast or go listen to a great thought leader speak. But what if at the end of that, if they said, okay, now everybody turn and have a conversation about it and say what you're going to do and get this person to ask you about it in 30 days? That's what we're trying to create, because it's much more likely that you're actually going to take action in your life. So I'm not going to go into a bunch of details about like how WildSpark works exactly, but a lot of what we're talking about today is some of the things that we are trying to bring into your organization. And I'll let Josh talk about some of the different content topics we might share around this.
Yeah, these are two examples, Hampton, of what somebody would experience going through WildSpark, like you're talking about. If you wanted to help your team personally develop, there's two options for you here within WildSpark, and there's more, but these are just two very specific ones. If you want them to understand what story is, what is their story, what stories do they want to tell themselves in their future, or thinking about their legacy, what impact are they going to leave in this life, that dash that Rachel talked about earlier. How are people going to remember them? How is what they do going to live on past just themselves into identity and wiring to understand where they're strong, where they're weak, where they need help. And then Big Rocks, that's all about prioritization and time management and making sure that we keep our fingers on the pulse of where we're at with these key areas of our life. Are the balls in the air or the balls on the ground? In respect to the 4Bs, this is going to help you with that with something like Big Rocks. So if you're on this webinar and you're not already leveraging WildSpark with your team and you want your team, you're watching this and you're like, man, I wish the people around me got this. This is an easy way to do that. That's super scalable. And we'd love to have a conversation with you about that. And I know like, as we're wrapping up here, we're going to take some questions potentially, Rachel, but I would love even like, as people are reflecting on like this webinar today, like if somebody feels comfortable, like boldly declare, like, as you're thinking about your body, being, balance, and business, is there something that like is just top of mind for you that you're like, I know that this is something I want to do in 2023. I'm going to go ahead and put it out here on the webinar for everybody to hold me accountable to. Feel free to throw that in the chat, and
that'd be awesome.
Me, Hampton, and Rachel, we will follow up with you on it. We'll ask you about it. I promise. If you need us to hold you accountable. Sorry, Rachel, what were you going to say?
Oh no, you're good. I was just going to say, and if you're in any sort of leadership capacity, if maybe you're a team leader, a mid-level manager, maybe you're a senior level leader in your organization, but apart from the visible results that we see in our lives and in our careers as a result of just personal development, your people feel cared for and invested in and poured into when you as a leader say, I care about you as a person. I care about you as a person, not just the productivity that you bring to this organization or this company. And so that really is such an ace in the hole when it comes to just tools that you could have as a leader to help your people be the best people that they can, and why wouldn't you want to invest in them, not only just at a base level to retain them, but to just see them grow and flourish within the walls of your organization, but also within at home. So that's some of the biggest feedback. part of my job is just going through customer feedback all the time. People who use WildSpark, how's it working, how's it not working, what can get better, and what are we doing right? And one of the main things that I hear all the time is people who maybe aren't in a leadership capacity yet, but their team has invested in them and going through WildSpark saying, I feel cared for, I feel seen, I feel like, my organization is investing in me. And that's a huge win. So if any of you do also just want to share, have questions about anything that we shared today, maybe if something, needs a little bit more elaboration, or you're curious about how something can be incorporated into your unique context, feel free to drop a question or a comment in the chat box. We've had a lot of really good back and forth today, so I appreciate you guys participating. Let's see, what have we got? JR, who's about to be a rock star WildSpark sales intern. As I start to transition to a different phase of life, I want to develop a solid routine that hits all the facets we talked about today. Yes, brother, we're going to ask you about it.
It's awesome.
Let's
JR,
go.
we are
Can't wait to see you.
Fired up for you to be here, man.
Yeah, it's going to be great. All right, well, we'll keep the chat open in case you guys want to ask any questions. But if anybody's got anything, throw it in there. But I also want to mention what we're going to talk about here in the new year. In January, we're going to be holding another one of our #Wednesday webinars, which I'm so glad you brought that up, Swing, because now we're going to say it. But we're going to talk about emotional intelligence in the workplace. First of all, this actual content that we're going to talk about in January. It's sourced from a unit in WildSpark, and it is a doozy, y'all. Like, it's a game changer. Like, it helps you with self-awareness, knowing yourself really well, and then just helping you be that self-aware person in the presence of others, and how can you lift others up to be the best version of themselves and have that emotional intelligence in your workplace. So you do not want to miss this one. It's going to be so good. There are going to be so many practical takeaways for you to just thrive in self-awareness and emotional intelligence in all areas of your life. So you can scan that QR code and register. We're going to do it once again on LinkedIn Live. Love connecting with you guys here. Don't forget to register for that. And we're going to send you a follow-up email real shortly here after this webinar. That's going to include all those worksheets that we promised that you can take and dig into for the new year. And we'll also make sure that there's a registration link for this if you want to forward that or pass that along to people in your network as well.
That's good. Yeah, we'd love to talk to you. I saw Clint popped in with a question. Do you guys do anything in particular with your daily, weekly schedule to put focus on each of these? One of y'all want to take that first?
I can, if you want me to. Clint, I think that's a great question. And being transparent, that's something I want to work on in next year. But the best answer and what I've done this year is, like, I really do think it's all about building habits. So for me, it's just some people say that they have certain non-negotiables in their life. Some people say I have a non-negotiable that every single day I'm going to do something for my mind, my body, and my soul, which I know is a lot of this goes along with what we talked about today. But I think there's several strategies. I know some people write things on a mirror. Some people have somebody text them, but I think one thing is that if we go back to what Josh Swing said earlier about never missing twice, if we can just master the art of showing up in each of these areas of our life, even if it's really small, I think that's what's going to keep us from falling off track. So let's say every day, let's just say mind, body, soul. I don't know. For your mind, I'm going to read a page of a book every day. Body, I'm going to do 10 push-ups, and soul, whatever that means to you. Maybe it's prayer, maybe it's meditation. The one thing I left out, I guess that would be the balance part. And I'm going to ask an intentional question to my spouse or another one of my friends. If you start there and say, no matter what, I'm going to do those 4 things every single day, obviously, hopefully more. I think if you have that baseline, you're only going to grow from there. And I'm sorry if this is harsh, but for like the 10 push-ups or a page of a book or a quick prayer or moment of intentionality with your spouse, like if you can't do those things that each technically take 1 minute, then you might just not care enough. And then it's time to like reevaluate where you are. So my biggest thing is if you're not hitting those goals, start small and then build from there.
I would also say, just to add off of that, like I've incorporated weekly and monthly like planning sheets just into my daily routine, which also helps as well. If anybody's interested in those, send me a message on LinkedIn and I'll share them with you. But it really helps take those annual goals that you're setting or those targets that you're setting in the Impossible Game worksheet, and then it helps you break them down into like pieces throughout the months and years to get you to where you need to be. We have a really good question here from Saba. I think I said that right. I hope I did.
Yeah, I can speak in here. I think Hampton, what you just shared is relevant to Saba's question too, on how do we keep from falling off halfway through the year. One of the statistics I saw that we didn't put in the presentation today, but it was like the average person sets the same goal 10 times and never accomplishes it. So Saba, I feel you on this. I appreciate your transparency and in admitting that we may not have achieved everything that we wanted to achieve in 2022. I think the just show up principle that Hampton just talked about is really important. Like, how do we reevaluate the goals that we may have not hit and look at some smaller steps we could get there? So maybe a reevaluation of some of those goals that you missed out on. And then I just think that community is so critically important to keeping us on track. And so my recommendation to you, Saba, would be like, find a person or a couple of people that are willing to do that goal with you, and have like, even if it's a quarterly check-in. So to know that like in 3 months, they're going to ask me a question about it. And then in another 3 months, they're going to ask me a question about it. That mid-year fall off could be avoided because you know that you have other people that are relying on you to do it. So that would be my advice on trying to stay on track over the course of the year, would be those 3 things: reevaluate the goal, maybe break it down into smaller steps, and then put other people around you and make sure that they hold you accountable to it. Anything that y'all would add?
I don't think so, brother. That's about it. I mean, between everything that's been shared and different worksheets we've got, yeah, I think there are ways to just break it up into smaller attainable goals. That way you can actually get there or be able to do some of that rearranging when you go and you take an inventory of things. I think that's important too, is like you said, Swing, like if you're in Hampton, you mentioned this as well. Like if you've set a goal and then within 2 months, like you find that it's not a realistic goal or it's not an attainable goal, your circumstances change, whatever it is, like myself, I had a certain particular goal for a workout program, and then I got sick 3 times in the last 7 weeks. So, had to make some changes, and like it was great. I was able to just give myself some of that grace and self-compassion and then just pivot. So, lots of grace and self-compassion as well as you go through it.
It's important.
Yeah. Well, guys, I think we're coming to an end. Our time is up.
Yeah, it was an absolute blast to spend some time with all of you. We wish you a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, finish the year strong, whatever you're doing, and we will be sending and sharing these resources with you. I challenge you to block off some time to really think through these, so that when January 1 hits, you know exactly what the plan is, and boldly declare it to somebody else, and I don't think you're going to regret it. So we will see you in January, as we are talking about emotional intelligence, which I think we could all use some work on. So we'll see you soon.
Bye, everyone. Thank you. You'll be hearing from us with an email.